I think we all got muted. We're back.
Yeah.
All right, we good. We're good. Anyways, this workshop is going to be all about having open, honest conversations about the real life solutions that we need when dealing with the craziness of family situations. First, I just want to start off with who we are. So, if you don't know who I am, my name is Kris McCabe, and I have been the primary full time caregiver for my grandma Mary, who lives with Alzheimer's disease. And I have been her caregiver for almost 8 years now. I am so excited to be joined today with all of you and my fellow Care Squad members who are just wonderful friends to me and amazing mentors. So, Alma and Ashley, you guys can introduce yourselves.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ashley, and my journey into dementia and caregiving began at a very young age. And I always share about my family and my great grandma Trolley and my Nana Jeanette, who were both diagnosed with dementia, and just witnessing the caregiving roles that my parents stepped into and my entire family, which kind of planted the seed for me to then later on pursue a career in gerontology, which is the study of aging, and social work. And so this is my passion, and I'm also very excited to be here with everyone and to be chatting with my Care Squad group members, Kris and Alma. So thanks for having me.
Hello, everybody. My name is Alma Valencia, and I am part of a growing caregiver journey known as Sandwich Generation, caring for our elders and children at the same time. Mom was diagnosed with frontal temporal dementia, FTD, um, in 2017, and we have been taking care of her ever since 2015. That's when everything just like exploded. So it's been a long journey of 9 years. I started caring for mom along with my aunt who was supporting me. So for 4 years, she was my care partner. And then mom moved in with us full time in 2019.
So, we all have been touched by caregiving, as all of you have as well. On this journey, there is lots of ups and downs, and caregiving shouldn't be a one person job. I know that sometimes it falls on maybe the power of attorney or the person who stepped up to maybe have their loved one live with them. And that can really cause a lot of trouble in the family. So that's kind of what we want to discuss today is how to recognize your job as a caregiver and other jobs. So for me personally, I took in my grandma. I took her and had her move into my apartment. And so for the rest of my family, I was the caregiver. And so that meant that I was the hands on person. And a lot of times we don't recognize that there are other roles to caregiving and that people can contribute in the ways that work best for them. For me and my grandma have a great dynamic, and hands on has always worked for us. But yes, some people don't even identify as a caregiver because they might not see themselves in that full time role, or it can take some time to kind of understand the duties of what you are capable and able to do for your loved one. So, whether you initially identified as a caregiver or it took some time for that idea to come around, we are all in the thick of it. And many families face these challenges when dealing with having a loved one with dementia. Dementia really does affect the whole family. So,
Mhm.
yeah, the everyone is able to contribute in their own way, and that's kind of what I found in my family. Even though I had the hands-on role, my mom and my sisters were not as comfortable taking care of my grandma, and they didn't recognize themselves as caregivers until we realized that there are many ways to show up. And so that's kind of, that helped our family dynamic a little bit and take the pressure off all on one person, which it can often sometimes feel like we are the only one who cares. And it can cause some trouble. I am no stranger. I didn't speak to my mom for 6 months because she wouldn't watch my grandma, and that caused so much turmoil for me and my family. And then We have been on this journey now for almost 8 years. So that was another dynamic aspect that my family started to get burnt out. My sister was watching my grandma almost every other weekend for me so I could get a break. And after a couple of years of that, it was like, when do I get to live, you know? And so sometimes the family can get messy.
And yeah, Kris, how did you all decide like what your roles would be in the beginning? Like when you're first getting that diagnosis and you're really trying to figure out, okay, this is what we have to do. This is scary, but who's going to do what? Or did it all fall on you?
So at first, it kind of all fell on me because I was the one who said, I want to take care of grandma. But I did ask, will you guys support me in this? And so it was really just finding avenues that they were comfortable with. My mom was living in South Carolina at the time when we lived in Chicago. And so there wasn't much hands on she could do. But
Mm.
we realized that she is an organizer and she is very in charge of the paperwork and she can make the phone calls. I'm a millennial. I don't want to be on the phone with nobody at any time. So my mom was really great at that. And, for a while, I did resent that she wasn't hands on. But once you lower your expectations and you understand that not everyone is going to show up the way you would, and you are willing to accept the help that is offered, it can
Mm.
make a little more peace. So, yeah, my mom was the organizer. My sister was the backup. She was more my emotional support. And then I fell on the burden of the main component of caregiving.
Wow.
Yeah, I completely understand that, Kris. Family, it's interesting. Like with us, when mom received her diagnosis, my aunt was also taking care of my aunt who had Alzheimer's. And then a few years before, my grandmother had passed away from Alzheimer's. So like we all like huddled and like supported each other. But then as you mentioned, family gets burnt out too, and this journey is so long. And sometimes our loved ones, are thriving because of our care. So
Mhm.
so it's necessary to meet them where they're at sometimes. And in the beginning, like they were all gung ho and they're like, yeah, family is everything. We'll be there for you. And slowly but surely, I started to see things were dwindling. And I'm like, okay, um, yeah, it gets tricky. It gets a little messy.
Mhm. Mhm.
So,
And
yeah.
you're kind of reminding me of my family too, when we first got the diagnosis for my nana, and it was actually 10 siblings coming together. 10, which is a lot. Getting 10 very stubborn, hard-headed siblings together to make a decision and to create a care plan for my grandmother. And I remember for me stepping in that role, putting on my social worker hat and calling the Alzheimer's Association, looking into respite, in-home care, like what can we do and how can we get everybody on the same page, because everybody is all over, right? Some are scared, some are knowledgeable, some have no clue what's going on. And so trying to get everybody on the same page, understanding what the diagnosis actually is, and then how are we as a family going to approach it? How are we going to get supports in the home, in-home care, and some of those things that I mentioned earlier. So figuring out, like Kris, like you mentioned earlier, those roles and who's good at what's your skill, what's your strength, and what can you step up to do and be accountable for, and what can I step up to do and be accountable for, so it doesn't all fall on one person, right?
Yeah. And sometimes you're an only child, and that can feel like
Mm.
a burden on its own because we are lucky or unlucky, however you view it, that we have siblings that may not always show up, but at least we have the opportunity and the option for open communication and dialogue between family members. when you're an only child, I can only assume that that burden just feels like the weight of the world, because you look around and it's your parent or your loved one, and or a spouse. It might feel very daunting, caring for, you know, the love of your life, and not have that extra support. So caregiving is definitely more than a one person job. You have to be open to help in all forms. You have to kind of let go of those expectations. I know that it's hard when you want things done right. They say do it yourself. You will burn out. Trust me. That is one of the biggest things about being a caregiver and trying to do it all, is that burnout will creep up real quick. I've been there. I actually had some really bad mental health issues around 2021, after I had been caring for my grandma for about 5 years, and my family started to dwindle because they were burnt out as well. So sometimes you have to get creative and find your people and create your caregiver family or your care squad.
Mm-hmm. Thank God for social media. Thank God for these connections. We are each other's lifeline. We really are, you know, and we is the beauty of social media. And I'm a very visual person. So if I see somebody trying something and I can connect it to my mom, I'm like, all right, how can I change what they did and figure something out with my mom that will suit her. And then just keep going. And then you just make these connections with caregiver friendships, you know, and we just uplift one another. And so it is not so lonely. It is not so lonely in those times where we feel like I'm, you know, I have no support physically. I'm like, okay, then I'm gonna have to reach out to somebody else that understands what I'm going through. And then, as you mentioned, also understanding the diagnosis. We took care of my grandma who had Alzheimer's. We took care of my aunt who had Alzheimer's, and then now taking care of my mom who has frontotemporal dementia, which is completely different. It's 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 hard to find resources. Well, it was hard to find resources, but now with us sharing our experiences and talking and connecting and supporting one another, again, I don't feel as alone. Yeah.
Love that. Okay, let's check the chat. I think we've got a few questions, and I see someone
Yes.
has their hand raised. Are we going to do questions um, now, or do we want to
Ooh, let's
wait?
do the role playing.
Oh, yes, that's right. We've got a really fun, yes, a really fun role play, because we want to hear from you guys. We want to see how you have handled some of your situations and family dynamics and get your insight. So we will hold some of the questions towards the end. And first, before we do the role play, let's also talk a little bit about techniques. I know in our conversations, Alma and Kris, we've talked about how do you handle these family dynamics? How do you have these conversations? What are some techniques to really resolve conflict within the family? I think one thing we've already said is communication, right? Open communication, being able to let that be the starting point, sitting down, having a conversation or a care plan meeting, as we call it in the field. We call it a care plan meeting, and again, thinking about who's going to do what role can you take, what role can you be accountable for, and involving maybe a third party like a social worker or a geriatric care manager to come in and be that neutral party that can help guide the conversation just in case it gets a little heated and escalated. Bring in that third party so that they can help guide the conversation and offer some insights and maybe get everybody on the same page, because that's going to be really important. And then another technique we've talked about is setting healthy boundaries. Love boundaries. very important in caregiving role, making sure that you are respected, that folks are not walking all over you, and that you're not taken advantage of, and that those family members who aren't showing up, that they don't get to continue to do that. At some point, you draw a line and you're able to decide if they're going to be involved at all anymore. Um, and then another technique we've talked about is making sure that you keep your person at the center of the decision making. So if things are getting heated, things are getting escalated in those care planning meetings or in your planning with your family members, and you can't seem to get on the same page, one thing that we've talked about that is helpful is making sure that you keep your person at the center of the conversation, at the center of the decisions. That way, you don't get caught up in the winning the fight or proving your point with your siblings who aren't on the same page as you. Just remember that it's all about the person that you're caring for and their quality of care and getting the right resources and supports in the home to support them and to support you as the primary caregiver. All right, did I miss anything? I know we talked about some of these techniques, guys, but did I miss anything?
Mm-mm.
No.
No.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
boundaries, expectations, outsourcing, that is all very needed. And yeah, should we do
Talking about expectations, you know, we mentioned like lowering your expectation, and it's not a bad thing, you know, lowering your
Mhm.
expectation about from somebody. If anything, you're allowing space for the family member and recognizing that you're also meeting them where they're at, you know, and of course it doesn't feel fair to the main caregiver, but we understand that everybody else has other lives, everybody else has other, you know, responsibilities and activities or illnesses, you know. It's hard, it's hard, but the goal is to work together. You know, my motto around here is teamwork makes the dream work. My kids always tease me about it, but you know, once you like figure out like everybody's roles and how we can support. I know my sister will support me with taking the kids out. She's like, let me do the fun stuff. And I'm like,
Mm.
okay, that is where you can contribute. And like today, my little girl's at a volleyball game. So my sister is helping out with that. And she's like the cheerleader at the game. I'm here and I'm taking care of mom. So that's how we support one another. Um, I mean, I would love to have her here, but it's okay. I am meeting where my loved one is at, and that is how she can. And so you just, it's all about just balancing, you know, balancing the emotions, you know, and just trying. And there is no formula for all of this. There is no perfect thing. Am I doing something right? Am I doing something wrong? We are all doing our best. We
Mhm.
are all doing our best, you know, and that's just something that you need to remind yourself and allow yourself the grace to just keep going and keep trying. And even if you're having a bad day, you know, tomorrow you just try again.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think what
That's
Ashley
true.
said too about having like a mediator of sorts, because that really was an impact for my family. We're hot-headed Italians. As soon as we don't like something, we're like, rah! It goes from 0 to 100 really quick. And then you're not listening. You're not actually communicating anymore. It was a constant fight between, but I need this and I can't provide it. And so we weren't listening to one another's needs. And
Mhm.
after a while, we didn't speak. And that was really heartbreaking in its own, not just for me as a caregiver losing my family members, but for my grandmother who loves her family more than life itself. And so we had to kind of communicate openly and honestly and without fighting. Just keeping that clear connection. Like Ashley said, your loved one is at the forefront. So listen, if taking care of grandma is fearful, you're afraid to do it, I can't expect that from you. I can't
Mhm.
expect me from you because you are who you are. Do you know what I mean? So, really recognizing those roles and what everyone is capable of. And it's a practice, it's not easy. I mean, I went without speaking to my mom for a while, I went without speaking to my sister for a while. And we didn't even touch on the fact that I have another sister who literally is non existent anymore because she told us that when my grandma got diagnosed, well, she doesn't know who I am. So it's like she's already dead to me. And that is a literal
Wow.
conversation that we had. And instead of me pulling, please, grandma loves you, you have to, that's something for her to deal with. And I'm going to focus on what I am able to control. And that's my care.
Yep.
I love that. You can't take on what she's decided to not be involved in, right? And I
Yep.
think a lot of people are resonating with that in the chat. Someone even asked or kind of made the comment about when those family members, similar to your sister, just completely disappear. Like, how do you reconcile with that? How do you hold space for the emotions around that because it's upsetting, but then how do you move forward because you still have to care and you still need support to do so. So who do you then tap into now that your sister is not available or has disappeared?
Yeah, and that's when you create your community and you find the people who are willing to show up for you in ways that you appreciate or need, you know? It's not always going to be the way, you know, even my friends who show up and now care for my grandma when I'm in need, maybe they don't do everything the way that I do it, but I am supported and I am cared for in this as well. So it takes a long time, guys. I've been on this journey for almost 8 years. So I know there was a couple of people saying, y'all got it figured out. It takes a long time. It really does. Cause I mean, I still cry all the time. And we have dealt with all these family dynamics. We've had loss. We've had all of this. So in a few minutes here, we're going to break out into 3 separate groups. If you feel comfortable to share and connect with us and maybe connect with other people in the chat, that's really what this is all about, finding your people, finding your community, and in knowing that you're not alone in this family drama.
But before we break out, really quick, remember, if family, oh, my husband just got home. If family isn't there, there are other resources. You have to get creative. So look for your insurance that could provide respite support. Look for your church. Look at senior centers on social media. HFC has wonderful grants that can offer some financial support for respite. They also have what is that organization? Sorry, I'm drawing a blank.
Home care?
Home care. It's called Home Instead. And they also offer support groups in English and in Spanish. So HFC is a wonderful, wonderful resource that can offer just different things. So family, you know, we would love to have family around, and especially for only children, I mean, that are like doing it all, single children. There's other things that you can find locally.
And you can share some of those resources that Alma mentioned. You can share those with your family members because
Yes.
sometimes it's those educational resources that plant the seed and they are reading that material at home on their own. And then it kind of clicks for them. They step out of that denial and they say, okay, you know what? I'm going to be involved or I'm going to attend that support group with my sibling. I facilitate an African American Alzheimer's caregiver spousal support group and family support group. And a lot of times they are bringing their family members to the group to get them to understand that this is what the diagnosis looks like. This is normal and it's okay for us to talk about these things. It's okay for us to get on the same page. It is okay for us to seek help. And so let some of these resources be a guide to resolving some of the family dynamics and conflicts that you're experiencing as well. All right. So are we ready for, is it breakout time or do we still have
I
time?
think
Where are
just
we?
about, yeah. We
Yeah.
should be.
Yay.
I think they're going to do it automatically, right? We're all going to just go random to random groups, chat with your
Yes.
people in your groups. We're going to ask some questions and connect some more with all of you. And then I think we'll come back here for a little bit after the breakout and kind of talk a little bit more, have some Q&A and see how it goes.
Hmm.
Awesome.
For anyone who was in my breakout group, sometimes my grandma thinks I'm her ex-husband and not her granddaughter. She was smooching all over me and I was like, "Oh, Granny." So, you never know. You never know what they're going to see you as or view you as. But we had some really great conversations there in the breakout group. Lots of people going through the same family dynamics. It was a common thread.
Yes, we had a good conversation too, talking about boundaries and how to support other families who are also in the care role and just great conversation. How about you, Alma? Oh,
Um,
you're muted.
Sharing resources and yeah, also talking about, when family doesn't show up, and how to process that. It's hard. It's hard. None of this is easy. But again, the common denominator is just keep doing your best and focus on your loved one, making sure that they're safe and they're loved and they're cared for. And everything else, will fall into place. Yeah.
We're going to take the last about 5 minutes if anyone has any specific questions for any of us or wants to connect further. But we do appreciate you all so much for being here and just joining in the community.
I don't have any questions. My name is Sonia Navarez, and I took care of my mother. My mother passed away 4 years ago. But just to be in this meeting, it's been just great to hear you. I guess you guys are going through that, but seeing a granddaughter and what's her name, Kris. I mean, what you're doing with your grandma. I mean, yeah, that is amazing. Because I, like every other family, we have problems with even our own sisters, and see a granddaughter doing that. It's just amazing. I didn't want to be, I didn't want to be because I had my camera cover, but when I saw that, I was so moved. So I really, I'm very touched. And just see your grandma doing that to you, it's just, it's just very touching.
I
Beautiful.
am very fortunate that throughout my whole life, my family dynamics were always a little rocky, except for that woman. She was my anchor my whole life. She kept me afloat, so I'm very grateful to keep her. She is so over me being on this call right now.
She's
I'm sure
like,
y'all
let's
can
go.
hear her. She said, "Hey, girl, it's time to party." But I appreciate that because, and that's the thing about family. You create your family or you gravitate towards the people who show you the love. And I mean, really, my family dynamics have been a hot mess my whole life. So the dementia journey was only like one step further into that. So I'm really thankful for her. Despite this journey, we've been able to grow our love for one another and just really keep that at the forefront. So I'm sorry, she's getting a little loud back there.
Oh, don't apologize, please.
I'm lucky that my mom's asleep, so she's in La La Land.
I have a question. This might be a whole nother topic, but like if family doesn't help, just move forward, do your best. Like, everything you're saying is all great advice. What about the financial aspect when they're checked out helping mom and I'm doing that part of things, but now it's just not even fair because I'm paying for everything from wipes and cleaning products to see, just everything. And at the end of this all, mom does own some assets outright that she may or may not have at the end of this journey. But if she does, I can tell you right now, my sibling wants his half.
Mm.
And And I've never even thought that way, but I am feeling a little resentful that I am paying for everything. And one small thing I asked him to help out with, he used one of mom's checks and wrote a check to himself and wrote a reimbursement for this item. And I mean, I can't even begin how many hundreds, if not thousands of dollars in items I've spent when I've never done that. And
Mhm.
how do you deal with the financial aspect with family members?
I had that same thing happen. Was asking for respite care and they all said no. They said, just hire someone. I said, okay, well, this is the calculations for how much the care is. What is your contributions? And my mother, my sister, they said, well, why should we contribute for her care? And my mind was just blown. And it is a burden. I have been fortunate. HFC, I received a grant from them a few years ago and I was able to take a small respite. There are organizations out there who can supplement financially. It is a lot of work. I know you have to qualify and be chosen. So that can feel daunting, but search and apply for everything. I was hesitant at first, even with the HFC grant, but I kept applying. I applied twice and then I received it. So don't give up on that aspect because the financial struggle is huge, especially there's lots financially that can cause a burden, and family members not showing up is definitely one of those.
Mhm.
Yes, I am an IHSS provider here in the state of California, and so I receive compensation to care for mom. And my family has told me, they're like, well, you get paid to take care of her, so you know, why should we contribute? So similar conversation. But also I reach out to different organizations and apply for grants because I'm getting paid and I like that only covers like the bare minimum. So
Right.
I'm like stretching and budgeting and cooking at home and doing everything that I could possibly do to make ends meet. And God forbid that my car were like to need some, maintenance, or if, any emergency were to come up, or if I have to pay for stuff out of pocket for my mom. I'm like, it's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. So yes, to Kris's point, research any extra, grants or anything that you can find and just apply and just pull on all those resources that you can. Mhm.
Definitely. And know that each state is also different as far as what they offer. So
Mhm.
your state might not offer what the other state or your caregiving friend over here is receiving. So do the research, look into Medicaid, if you're eligible, if your loved one is eligible. I always say a good starting point is your local area agency on aging, because every state has to offer the Family Caregiver Support Program under the Older Americans Act. And so how they do that, how they do those funds might look different, but it's a good starting place to call that area agency on aging and ask and see how they have respite programs. I'm in the state of North Carolina. Anybody in North Carolina, reach out about Project Care. That's my program, and we are specifically providing respite care grant
Mhm.
funds for people living with dementia and their care partners. And
Yeah.
so, again, it depends on the state, but reach out. And the Alzheimer's Association, check out your local chapter because some of them also sometimes have respite grants.
Oh, shush, shush. Oh, kisses. Ah, and Miss Mary's kisses. She gives
So
the
sweet.
best hugs and kisses. Hi, Mary.
Love her.
Wow.
Ah,
Yeah, girl.
All right.
Well, thank you guys so much for being here. I think we're closing it out now. Uh, but
oh
I
my
think this was
gosh.
really great. It was awesome connecting with all of you. HFC is going to have a resource page, I believe, at the bottom. You can connect with all of us on our socials. And the replay of this will be sent to your emails so you can check out the other sessions that maybe you didn't hop into. But
Yes.
Great.
Thank you all for
Thank
being
you.
here.
thank you
Thank
guys.
you.
Caregivers are superheroes. Give yourself some grace and everyone hug on yourself. You know, those
And a
hugs
pat on
feel
the back.
good. Pat on the
You
back.
guys are doing a great job. Yeah.
Thank
And
y'all.
connect with each other. If you want to drop your information in the chat, feel free if you found a connection today.